James Xavier, MD, is a dedicated researcher and doctor. He hopes to develop a cutting-edge medical invention that will one day save a lot of lives. He is having his eyes examined at a colleague's clinic run by Dr. Sam in the opening scene. Sam finds it strange that it has only been 3 months since the last checkup. James responds that he needs to have his eyes checked frequently because he is about to use an experimental eye drop on himself. Dr. Sam believes it's a bad idea to participate in your own experiment, even though James is a qualified expert with years of experience. Only 10% of what is actually present in the world can be seen by the human eye. James is working to develop an eye drop that will enable people to see farther than their eyes can currently see. They will be able to see infrared, X-ray, and other wavelengths thanks to this new product. Although the doctor's plan is absurd, he is determined to make it a reality. James meets his close friend and co-worker Dr. Diane in his lab after the meeting. She explains to him that the lab's funders are getting impatient. James' experiment cost a lot of money, and they are now pressuring Dr. Diane for the results. Because James hasn't told her anything about his study, she is especially irritated. James invites her to the lab and offers to show her his discovery. He applies the eye drop to a monkey after describing what it does. The animal is required to undergo a color assessment test to determine whether it actually worked. He makes the right assumption despite the fact that he cannot see the color sheets from his vantage point. This demonstrates that he is capable of seeing through the color sheets and determining which one comes first. The monkey's intelligence leaves Dr. Diane speechless, but a few minutes later, the monkey suffers a cardiac arrest and passes away. Even though the death is tragic, it doesn't change the fact that the eye drop works exactly as it should. James wants to use the eye drop for medical purposes because, in that case, medical professionals could diagnose a patient's condition simply by looking at them. To continue his research, he must, however, borrow money from the investors. A few days later, Dr. Diane sets up a meeting between him and the investors. The doctor is willing to use his own body to demonstrate the effectiveness of his invention. He explains his plan to Dr. Sam, who is adamantly opposed to it. He feels that risking his life for the experiment is not worthwhile. Sam is nonetheless persuaded by James to assist with the application process in some way. Dr. Sam administers the drop to his eyes in the following scene. James initially experiences vision loss and only recognizes colors and patterns. More light than he has ever seen in his life, according to how he describes it. Then he realizes he can read the stacks of paper on the table without turning them over by seeing through them. Although he is delighted that the product works, he is still limited to seeing through surfaces of objects. 2 more drops are put into his eyes by the doctor after getting overly excited. The second drop burns more intensely than the first, and he immediately regrets his choice. Sam and Dr. Diane are in a meeting with the investors in the next scene. James is recovering from the eye injury, so he was unable to attend. The investors decide to stop funding the project because they no longer have faith in his work. Sam and Dr. Diane visit him to deliver the bad news. James has bandages over his eyes to help him with the pain, but he can see very clearly through them, almost as if they don't exist. He returns to the hospital a week later. He meets a young girl with stenosis who is introduced to him by the nurse. James learns that the original diagnosis was incorrect and that she actually has a tumor that is attached to her heart thanks to his new ability. He informs the girl's primary care physician about it, but the man is driven by pride and won't listen. Dr. Diane drives him to a party that night. Even though James doesn't particularly enjoy these events, he makes an effort to mingle and dance with a lovely woman. His eyes begin to scratch, and when he opens them again, he discovers that he can see through people's clothing. Dr. Diane is exposed when James turns around in disbelief. Dr. Diane brings him home as soon as she learns that she is visible to him. The young girl's surgery is scheduled for the following day. James asks the primary physician to change his mind about the diagnosis numerous times. James resorts to drastic measures and cuts the surgeon's hand just before the procedure begins when he still won't listen. He can no longer operate on the girl due to the wound, so James performs the procedure instead. He performs the proper surgery to remove the tumor and uses his own reputation to save the young girl's life. Despite the fact that the surgery was a success, the other doctor accuses him of malpractice. James visits Sam the following day for a regular eye exam. Sam notices that James is rapidly losing his ability to see things as they would appear to normal human eyes and can only see bones, muscles, and nerves in people. It transpires that he has been continuously using the eye drop since the previous application. Sam begs him to stop right away, but James is too focused on his experiment to be concerned about Sam's well-being. He will soon be able to see things that no man has ever seen in human history if he uses the eye drop consistently. Sam tries to tranquilize his friend forcibly out of concern for his well-being. James accidentally pushes him off the window and kills him during the ensuing struggle. Although he regrets what he did, there is nothing he can do to alter the past. James shouldn't be accused of causing a death by accident, according to Dr. Diane, who was there and saw everything. She therefore assists him in fleeing before the police show up. The town learns about the murderous doctor the very next day. James is no longer able to carry on his medical practice or appear in public as his former self. He assumes a new name and persona, then begins acting as a talent in a freak show. He makes money by using his ability to predict what will be in the viewers' pockets. James is disappointed with how things have turned out because he had hoped that his discovery would save millions of lives. The owner of the freak show Crane is aware of James' talent. He makes every effort to figure out his trick, but to no avail. One day, a woman is hurt close to their set. James checks her out quickly for wounds and discovers that she has a broken leg. Before the paramedics arrive, he gives her the best assistance he can. Crane realizes he might be a doctor after witnessing how well he handled the situation. He makes James an offer that is certain to be profitable for both of them. He suggests setting up a diagnosis center where people can go to learn what exactly is wrong with their bodies prior to seeing a doctor. James approves of the concept, but only because he will be able to put his influence to good use. They travel back to the former city the following day and stay in a basic apartment. James reapplies the eye drops to his eyes before going to bed. Since he tried it out for the first time with Dr. Sam, it has become a routine. He is able to see through the ceiling above him with this drop. James quickly dons a pair of black glasses to block out the damage the eye drops have caused. Immediately after, Crane brings their first client, an elderly, wealthy woman who has recently been experiencing serious health issues. She fears it could be cancer, but James can tell by looking at her that she is simply tired from getting older. He tells her not to worry because, if she rests for a few days, the pain will go away. Later on that day, James spends some time alone in his room tracking the effects of the medication. Crane interrupts him and implores him to leave right away. When James follows the instructions, he finds a crowd of people waiting for him to examine them and determine their illnesses. His reputation has been spread by the elderly woman from yesterday among her group of wealthy friends. Crane steals several bills throughout the day while James attends to the patient's needs. With time, their clinic gains more notoriety. One day, Dr. Diane learns something about the clinic and, recognizing the new miracle physician immediately, rushes to meet him or her. James is seated in front of her, but he is unable to identify her and can only make out her muscles. When Dr. Diane speaks, James' memories of his previous life suddenly come flooding back. She admits that she received patients who knew exactly what was wrong with them when they arrived. She eventually connected the dots and learned of his return. The doctor has someone to talk to about his emotions for the first time in months. He admits that he can't sleep at night because he can see through his own eyelids. He can no longer stop using the drops even though they have become a curse that has turned his life upside down. Dr. Diane is concerned about his well-being, as well as the possibility of the police locating him due to his notoriety. She begs him to go somewhere secure, but Crane refuses. He is accustomed to profiting from James' talent and doesn't intend to stop. After fighting Crane, the couple flees the community. James wants to learn how to control his eyes now, but the experiment will cost money. They consequently travel to Vegas and end up in a casino. James' talent comes in handy when he gets to play poker. He has amassed enough cash by the end of the night to get him through a month. The manager of the casino and a police officer then approach him and accuse him of cheating because nobody can win that many rounds in a single evening. A police officer pulls his glasses off to reveal that James' eyes have changed color as he tries to explain himself. He is initially startled by the sight, but he quickly recognizes James as the insane doctor who fled after killing his friend. James escapes before he is apprehended by getting in a car and driving off after the backup arrives to arrest him. He crashes while attempting to flee the helicopter that is trailing him. The doctor, fortunately, escapes the car unscathed after the collision. He eventually arrives at an open church where people are busy singing hymns after a short while of walking. James' eyes have fully turned away by this point. James is aware that he is too far gone to be saved, despite his father's assurances that God will save him. At this point, when he looks up at the sky, he can see God. Dr. Diane and 2 police officers arrive, but no arrest is made. James measures both of his eyes, wallowing in regret over what he has done. He turns to the camera and reveals that his eyes have vanished as the film comes to a close. Thank you for watching. Why don't you consider subscribing while you're here? We have the best recaps around and would love to have you part of our community. Thank you and see you in the next one.